Have you ever known exactly what God should do and exactly when He should do it? It's a dangerous place to be. I remember just a few years ago standing outside of a hospital room, literally outside of the hospital. It was during COVID, and praying a prayer. We were a bunch of people there praying for somebody who was struggling with COVID. And I just remember praying to God, God, this is not right. She needs to be healed, and she needs to be healed today. God said no to both. She wasn't healed that day. She wasn't healed any day. She went home to be in heaven. And I just remember thinking, God, if you would have just listened to me, I told you what needed to be done. I told you what exactly needed to be done and when it needed to happen. What an arrogant prayer. So if you've ever prayed for something and implied that you knew that here's what needs to happen, God, and here's when it needs to happen, well, you're not alone. A lot of people have prayed like that. In fact, if you look at John chapter 11, it's a beautiful story and it's a tragic story at the same time. John chapter 11, Jesus is doing ministry and he gets a messenger from a friend. He finds out that his friend, his financer, one of the people closest to him in his ministry, a man named Lazarus, is dying. And his sisters sent a message to Jesus. They have seen Jesus heal people. They have seen Jesus do miracles. They have seen Jesus feed thousands of people at just a lunch. And so they know if they could just get Jesus to show up before Lazarus dies, that Lazarus would be healed. And so they send a message to Jesus, and Jesus tells his disciples, we're not going. And the disciples argue with him, maybe rightfully so. They say, Jesus, this is Lazarus, your friend. Are we not going to go? At least check on him? You can heal him. And Jesus says, no, we're not going to go. And finally, a few days later, Jesus decides, well, let's go. Let's go check on Lazarus. You see, Jesus knows the situation. Jesus knows exactly what happened to Lazarus. Jesus knows what his friends don't yet, and that is that Lazarus has died. And that's when Jesus decides to show up. And when he shows up, the sisters rush and meet Jesus, and they say, Jesus, if you had only been here when we sent a message for you, then our brother would not have died. If you would have been here and done what we asked, we wouldn't be in this situation. We knew exactly what you should do and exactly when you should do it, but you didn't show up, and now look at us. We're a mess. It's a disaster, and your friend is dead. And Jesus, being Jesus, looks at the sisters and says, your brother will rise again. And there's some crying and there's some weeping and there's some more questioning of Jesus, but Jesus eventually is standing outside the tomb of Lazarus, and you know the story if you've read the scriptures. He calls Lazarus back from the dead. He'd been dead for 4 days. Jesus brings him back to life because Jesus had something better in mind for Lazarus than Mary and Martha did. And Jesus had a better time to do it than Mary and Martha could ever imagine. And there's hope in that for me, and there's hope in that for you, that when God doesn't show up when we think he should, and God doesn't do what we know he should do, instead of being distraught and instead of being angry, instead of giving up hope, instead of walking away from God, we can trust that God has something better in mind. And God has a better time in mind. So if you've been wrestling, if you've been praying, if you've been telling God, here's what needs to happen, here's when it needs to happen, if you don't understand God's timing, if you don't understand God's method, you can always trust that he's got something better in mind than you imagined. So keep praying, keep hanging in there, but pray humble prayers. Pray prayers like Jesus prayed. Father, here's what I want, but it's not about what I want. It's about what you want. Your will be done in my life. That's a humble prayer. God, do whatever you want in my life, whenever you want to do it. I will trust you because I know you've got good plans for me and you have something better than I can possibly imagine. I hope you find encouragement in that.